Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good, good. How about you?
I'm well. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
How's things been going for you?
Busy, as usual. You know,
Busy?
it's a lot to do.
Yeah. So we're going to use this time to the best of our abilities because I know you're a very busy person.
I appreciate that.
All right. So let me just give you the rundown of how things are going to go today. As you know, as we talked about in the large group session, the purpose of this session is to go over your individual results.
Yes.
And what that means is your individual results are confidential. Only you and I have access to your results. They will not be with your manager. They will not be in HR, with your company. Only you and I. So this conversation is just between us.
Good to know. Good to know.
All right. Any major questions for me? Any burning questions before we get going?
Well, you'll probably go through it. It just, you know, it didn't make sense to me. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be me, but you'll tell me.
Okay. Well, that's what this session is about. We'll figure it out together.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So in your profile, if you remember the different stages of development, we have a summary here. And we talked about those 5 stages in the group session.
I remember.
Right?
Yeah.
And a person can range from a very early stage of development to a later stage of development. And if you remember what we talked about with this framework and this model, it really is about just measuring your effectiveness across cultural differences. It's not about a person being good or bad, intelligent or not intelligent. It just really is about our experiences and how much we've been paying attention to them.
But I had a bad score though, didn't I?
Well, let's take a look at the score.
Okay.
So on page 6, we actually have 2 scores.
Yep.
So the first score up here, this bar, is called our perceived orientation. Another way of talking about a perceived orientation is this is kind of like an aspiration that we have for ourselves.
Okay.
It's also how we want other people to see us. And so your perceived orientation is right there in the stage of minimization. And so what that means is when you are interacting across cultural differences, you really want to find commonality with people. And that's how we build relationships.
Isn't that good?
That's a great skill to be able to find commonalities with others.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's talk about this developmental orientation. Developmental orientation, this is what we would call your real score. If this one was your aspiration, then this is where what we talk about where your current capacity is around interacting across cultural differences.
So I'm delusional now. Is that what you're saying?
Not delusional.
No.
Actually, folks in the stage of polarization are not delusional at all. They feel very confident about their own culture, about their own worldview and the way that they see things and how they move and operate in the world. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. Yeah, I think so. I have to be. I'm a supervisor. I've managed a lot of people, so I got to be confident for what I do.
Yeah. So let's take a deeper look here at the characteristics of polarization. Now, if you remember from the presentation, polarization can take on 2 different forms. Your polarization, the way the IDI measures, is from defense. So what polarization defensiveness means is you're going to have an overly critical view of maybe other people's culture or just the way they do things, and a more uncritical view of the way that you do things. Does that sound familiar at all for you?
Well, I mean, when I work with some of my people, I mean, I have to tell them when they're doing it wrong. Some of the things that they do is not right? So I have to say this is the right way to do it, and I will help them how to do it right. So is that what you're saying, that I do that too much, or what?
Well, as a supervisor, it's important for you to make sure that you're supporting people in being effective.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, there might be some miscommunication in how we are interacting with people that are culturally different than us, that maybe it might come off in a way as being judgmental.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten any feedback like that before?
Well, actually, a couple of days ago, this just reminded me, maybe this is what you're talking about. I was in a good mood. I came in, and my men who are mostly, and they're mostly men, or they're all men actually, they are, I think they're Mexicans.
Okay.
And some of them are born here, but a lot of them are from Mexico.
Okay.
And they were playing, they had the boombox on, and they were having fun, but they were working, which is good. They're very hardworking people. And they were playing some sort of, I don't know, Spanish music and
Okay.
a lot of whatever it was, mariachis or whatever it's called. And so I thought, oh, so I turned it off and I put it on some real good music. Here's some
Okay.
good music. I put some good old country music.
Okay.
Some Garth Brooks, those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And so I put it on, and then I don't know, they got quiet, and so I just walked away. Then the foreman Juan, who's really good with I really depend on him. He's very good with them, and I really depend on the job. He just said, maybe it might be good to just let them play their own music. I'm like, what's a joke? No big deal. They might miss out.
Yeah.
Like, no, well, this is the way they work. Like, okay, fine. So I went back there, put it back to their music, and I looked at them. They were smiling. So I guess it worked out. So I guess I was, they might have felt I was, putting down their music.
So we're going to take a deeper look here at some of the characteristics in your developmental orientation of polarization defense. Now, while these are all characteristics of the stage, it doesn't mean that you will experience all of them. So I'm just going to read through a couple, and I just want you to start thinking about your own experience.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
So the stage of polarization defense, there is a strong commitment to your own worldview.
Yeah, definitely.
There may also be times that you have mistrust of others, or there might be a fear of others.
Yeah, sometimes the other cultural other people, the way people think or their beliefs kind of, I don't want to be close to, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes from possibly that their differences may be viewed as threatening or divisive, which might make you want to have some distance with that. Yeah. And that you might believe that your way of doing things is the right way, but other folks may not experience it the same way.
Okay, I can see that.
You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so these are just some of the characteristics. So let's talk about how some of the things you can see, some of the things maybe you had not thought about before. The things that maybe you have not thought about before shows up in your orientation gap.
Okay.
What is the orientation gap? That's the difference between your perceived orientation and where you aspire to be and your current developmental orientation. As you can see, your gap is a little bit over 38 points. What does that mean?
Isn't it?
The number that we focus on is 7. Whenever a gap is larger than 7, that's an indication that you are probably not operating in the way that you'd like to be seen.
Okay.
Because there is there's a capacity gap in your ability to effectively navigate those kinds of differences.
So how do I do? So I'd like to be able to, not have that gap.
Yeah.
I mean,
So let's talk about some actions that you can take and some strategies for doing that. So tell me about some of your goals.
Well, I think I don't know if I mentioned before. I work with a group of men. I have a foreman who's really good. I want to make sure that the workplace, the work site is safe. That we build good homes.
Okay.
We do the framing. I don't know if you know what we do, but we do the frames and the foundation, and so it's really sort of the starting point right, of the houses.
Yeah.
And so it has to be to code, to budget, on time. That's what I'm measured on.
Yeah.
And we gotta get it right.
Yeah. And foundation is most important in building a house.
Yeah. And it's not. I also want my workers to be happy, right?
For sure.
So I think if they're happy, then they're doing a good job. It's a good place to work, and that's what I want.
Yeah. And so the foundation of building effective relationships, given your stage or given your orientation, will be to maybe be a little bit more curious about those differences where you can start to find some of those commonalities that might be there. Because if we're not asking questions or making assumptions about what those differences are, we can't be as effective as we need to be across those differences.
Okay.
Anything coming to mind around that in your experience?
Well, I think I don't know if I mentioned already about the music thing, and I rely on Juan, so I think I can do more. You said do more to be more curious and find out more about what they like, how they like to work. I just rely on Juan to do that. Because he's also Mexican, I think. I think he was also born in Mexico, Mexico City, I think. I know a little bit about him.
And it seems like you have built some relationship with Juan, and so you have some skills
we work
to
together,
find those commonalities.
Yeah, I get to know his family, I get to know what he likes and what he like and don't like. I supervise him, but we're in the same team, right? So we're good.
So one of the things to think about is, how can I use some of the same techniques or skills that I've used to build relationship with Juan, that they might be transferable to build with some of your other workers also.
Okay. And to be, like you mentioned, that less, is it defensive? Or
yes, less defensive, that it can come across to other people that you're committed
I'm not being
to
defensive.
your own
I think I'm just being confident in my own culture, my beliefs, right? But you're saying that it might seem defensive or, okay, I got it.
And confidence is good to have. And so you have to think about that fine line of confidence and humility. What are the things that you're confident? I imagine you're confident because you're an effective supervisor. You've been on the job a long time. You have good marks. Most of your jobs are done on time. So you have a high standard that you've set for yourself. And it seems like you have a crew around you that you've hired because they have that commonality in the work ethic around that. So you are finding some commonalities there. So it's an opportunity to be more intentional about looking for those differences, and in those points of differences, where might there be some connection? So given your stage of development, and when you think about the work and the goals that you have, you want safety. You talked about safety and that being important. And one of the things that I got from that, it seems like it might be a communication, maybe something in the communication, miscommunication around the safety piece. You say you tell them things, but they don't get it right. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think sometimes, I think so. It feels like, we tell them multiple times, right? And we think they get it, but the same mistakes happen. Right? So we think maybe, okay, is it English? And so we've used one more to sort of translate. I've checked on it more to make sure it's done right. So I'm not sure why they keep getting, when we keep telling them how to do it.
So that might be a goal that you could set for yourself, and really being intentional and having that conversation with Juan to start about what might be getting in the way, right? Because if we're saying the same things over and over, maybe we might need to shift or change the way we're actually giving the message. Possibly.
So it could be the way I'm telling them.
Possibly, or how they're interpreting it.
Okay.
So maybe using Juan as a cultural bridge to really understand if they are truly understanding.
So I'm trying to be clear.
And it's good to be clear.
But maybe they're not reading it that way. They're not interpreting it that way. Okay.
And so asking the question to find out might be a good start in a goal.
Okay.
All right. And so given that, we're going to move on to your IDP, where we'll talk about what are some of the activities and things that you can do to help close that gap and get you closer to where it is that you'd like to be and being more effective.
You don't want gaps. Not in building. No, I don't want the gap.
We'll work on it.
Okay, great.